It is a beautiful day here in north central Ohio, and I thought I would take a break from mowing the pasture and that hot sun to make a quick video here. So, somebody in a Facebook group that I'm in asked this question. Has anyone situated a milking pump on solar, trying to figure out the right size panel for a goat milk pump, 4 milk sessions a day? First attempt at taking advantage of solar power, so any insight would be appreciated. I don't think that just a panel is necessarily going to help. I imagine whether it's rainy or cloudy or whatever's going on, you got to milk those goats, right? You're going to need to be milked out so they don't get mastitis. So you're going to want to milk 4 times a day, rain or shine. It's probably going to be dark at some points, early morning, late at night, whatever. So right off the bat, that tells me that you need not only a solar panel, but you're going to need a battery and float you through those times when there's just not enough sun to drive the pump. You're going to definitely need a battery. I'm going to walk you through how to size a panel, a battery, a charge controller to charge the battery with the panel, an inverter to get the power out of the battery and into your milking pump. I'm also going to show you, depending on what kind of milk pump you have and how comfortable you are with cutting up your power cords, we could maybe skip the inverter and skip those inefficiencies from driving an inverter AC to AC and then back again AC to DC to drive your pump. So if you've got a DC pump that's got one of those big chunky plugs, that plugs into the wall to convert from AC to DC, then I'm going to show you how you could potentially skip the inverter and drive that, just like I did in a previous pumping application. I'm going to walk you through exactly how we're going to do that. So the question, how can I use a milking pump on solar really becomes some other questions. So how much power does the pump draw? And there are really two different questions that are this first question that we need to ask. Two different ways of looking at it. What is the most power that it will draw at one time? And what is the total power that it will draw overall for the whole time that we're milking goats? So the most power at one time, that's our peak power. That's going to tell us how big should our inverter be to make sure we don't fry anything, and how much surge power should our battery supply. Now in this application, we probably don't really need to worry about that, but that is something that you need to keep in mind when you get into bigger appliances, because this analysis is going to apply to any appliance, any sort of household appliance that you have. You're going to ask these questions and worry about these same sort of things. So and then what is the total power it will draw that for the whole time that we're milking? A lot of times with electricity, you can work with like water analogies. I should probably have prepared this analogy. This is not going well. All right, here we go. Sitting on the porch drinking some iced tea, so I'll use my glass of iced tea as our example. I can sit and drink this iced tea very slowly while I'm having a conversation, or I could come in and I'm very thirsty and I could chug it all at once, right? So the total iced tea that I'm going to drink, no matter what, whether I drink fast or slow, is just going to be this 16-ounce mason jar, right? So that's the total power. That's like how you would think about total power from a battery. How much juice does it hold? And then the power that it draws at one time is going to be, how fast basically is it drinking. So think about how much juice do we need and how much can we supply at one time. This question, after we figured out how big our battery should be, the question becomes, well, how do we make sure we keep it charged then? Because really, when you're running off solar, you're running off of battery power, and you're just charging the battery with the solar. So the question is, how can we time the charging of the battery to make sure that there's power in the battery when we need it? For that, you got to think, well, what if the sun doesn't come out for a few days? How much sun do I get even on a very sunny day here in Ohio? Those sorts of considerations. So generally, you want to think you might go 3 days without sun. You want to look up the average amount of sun you can expect. And so when you're milking goats, your application here means that you're doing it year round, right? Potentially, unless you're going to let them dry up in the winter or whatever. You got to think, what's my worst case scenario? It's cloudy, it's cold, it's winter time, and it's been a few days since we've seen the sun. So how can we make sure we keep our battery charged up that whole time? How big do we want to make our battery? So maybe we only need, a tiny battery for one milking, but if we want to keep milking for days at a time without sun, well, maybe that means we need, either a larger battery or several batteries to make sure that we have that power available when we need it. And then when the sun does pop out, how quickly do we want the sun to top off our batteries? Well, generally the rule is you want, 1 day worth of sun. So in Ohio, I think you can average in the winter is maybe 2.5 or 3 hours. And that's an average. So that, because it's an average, you would assume you're getting that every day. Say that you're only getting maybe 2 hours of sun every day, but then maybe that means what that really means is not much sun at all for 2 days, and then the third day you get the full, 5 hours or something like that. So what we want to do is say, okay, if the sun pops out one day for 3 hours, that should be enough. We should have enough solar panels at our disposal to completely top off our batteries and buy us another, 3 days or whatever it is of power. So that's how we're going to look at that. Now that we know that how big our battery will be, how do we keep it charged up in time? So how much sun do we get in Ohio? And then how big should our solar panel array be to take advantage of that either 2 hours in the winter or 5 hours in the summer? So if we're going our worst case scenario, we're looking at the winter, how many solar panels are we going to need to top off our batteries? The answer to that question is going to lead us also to how big of a solar charge controller do we need to manage those solar panels? So in summary, how do you size your solar power system? It's going to be the same whether it's for a goat milking pump or anything else. You're going to determine your total power, you're going to determine your peak power, you're going to determine your battery size, and you're going to then determine your photovoltaic array size. That's your solar panels. And it's the same steps for everything. All right, that is a lot of information. I know I decided to cut this into a two-part video. So this is going to be part one. We've gone over generally what we're trying to do here. In the next part of the video, I'm going to show you how to use a cheap power meter that I got off of Amazon for about 20 bucks to complete steps 1 and 2. Figure out total power, figure out peak power. It's real easy to do. Like I said, it's cheap and anybody can do this. And once we have those numbers, that is going to be huge for determining what we actually need to do to size our battery. I put a link down below to the power meter that I use. I get a small commission from that, so I'd appreciate your support on that. And once you have that, you can go on to part 2 to see how to use that to size your exact milking pump, whatever your appliance is, and then we can move on with determining how big our battery should be. So check out part 2, see that link in the description, and good luck. Spacebar does not stop recording.